Okay, good morning and welcome to Iyun with Benzion. Today's daf is Yevamos Iyun Aleph 71. We had a discussion yesterday about the first word in this parak, Arel. The Mishnah says you can't eat truma and Arel. What is the case of Arel? What is the case of an uncircumcised man that is forbidden? A Kohen is forbidden to eat truma. Rashi classically says, there's Rashi all over the place says this type of thing. He says usually an Arel means Meitzalach of Machmas Mila. It's no fault of his own. He has a history in his family of lacking of blood clotting. Their blood doesn't clot well, so therefore, it's a kind of nefashos. A couple of his brothers died already when they had a bris milah. So if they died, he's probably going to die also. There's a chazaka that his family's going to die from bris milah. So machma sakanas nefashos, right? We're not docha. We don't do mitzvos if you're going to die unless yarg val for gimel chamuros, but other mitzvahs, we roll back the mitzvah. We don't do it if there's takanas nefashos, so you don't do it. It's honest. There's nothing you can do about it. So Rashi still learns, no, even though he's an honest, he's still called an arel. It's not his fault, but he's still called an arel. You can't eat truma. Not really his fault. When Tom says it's hard to call someone like that an arel, that he can't eat truma, technically he's an honest. So what is it? So the lashon of Rabbeinu Tam here, let's just quote this lashon exactly. It's quoted in the Tosfos Shanim over here. On Daf Ayin and Aleph, he says, the first Tosfos Shanim on this parak, Arel, Lachein Pirush Metam, the Arel wrote Lama Meshumad La'arelis. Meshumad, interesting word, Meshumad, means he rejects Arelis. He could have a bris milah. There's no problem with his blood clotting in his family. His father, I guess, didn't give him bris milah when he was younger. He wasn't available to give him, and his father rejected it. And he rejected it when he was 13, and basically said, get a bris milah. He said, I don't want to get it. He's Meshumad, interesting word, Meshumad. So it's his fault. Your fault. Mashma, according to Tosfos, that if it was just an onus, it's not your fault, right? You're still called. You're not called an arel, right? The Gemara learns out. There's two. Rabbi Eliezer learns out that an arel is possible in truma from Korban Pesach, and Rabbi Akiva learns it out from Ishish. We learned out possibly by Kachim and truma. If you're an arel, you can ish comes the rabos arel. So this is the machlokas between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Now let's move on to Ayin Aleph. Aleph today's daf. The Gemara has an interesting back and forth on top. The first thing we read today, Itzrach lemichtav arel, Itzrach lemichtav, the fourth line of Ayin Aleph kol beinechar. They had to say by Korban Pesach. Now remember, according to Rabbi Eliezer, we learn the din of arel by truma directly from Korban Pesach. So whatever the status of Arel is by Korban Pesach is going to be the same status by truma, right? So the Gemara says, "It's the myth of Arel, it's the myth of Kol Beinechar." It has to say both. Why does it have to say both? Because of Rahmana Arel Mishum Demois. If we said an Arel is possible for eating Korban Pesach or Shachtan Korban Pesach because he's disgusting, he's repugnant. Ava Beinechar lo Mois. Beinechar, he doesn't keep Judaism, or he's against Judaism. He's not disgusting. Someone who rejects Judaism, his heart is not in the right place. And Arel, where his heart is in the right place, I would say maybe he has no problem eating Korban Pesach. Mashmalan, they both came from Korban Pesach, and through Rabbi Eliezer drasha, we'd learn that the same thing applies by Truma. Now, seems pretty clear from the Gemara. It's called Arel Delibo L'Shamayim. Now, this makes sense according to Rashi. He's a God-fearing Jew. The reason he doesn't have a milah is because his brothers died. It's sakanat nefashos. He wants to do the mitzvah. He can't do it. According to Rabbeinu Tam, what does the Gemara mean? Libo L'Shamayim is Libo L'Shamayim. The Gemara calls it Arel Libo L'Shamayim. If you're meshumud, you're intentionally not giving yourself a bris milah. It doesn't sound like you're practicing Judaism too well. So, to make a distinction over here, I want to say it like this, to answer for Rabbeinu Tam, that there's a difference between a mummer and a meshumad. What beinechar? It says the word in the Torah, beinechar by Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach, beinechar le'yechalbo. What is a beinechar? Beinechar is a son, literally, of a nechar. A nechar is a non-Jew, the son of a non-Jew. Now, he's not a non-Jew, you think he's not Jewish. No, obviously he's Jewish. Torah, if he's not Jewish, he's not mechuyev in the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. The chiddush of the Torah is his mother's Jewish, obviously. And technically the halacha is, if your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish. But what happens? He His mother's Jewish, but his father's Christian, right? So they have a Christmas tree and they light Hanukkah candles. So technically, most of the holidays they celebrate. They live in America. They celebrate, the Christian holidays: Christmas, New Year's, Easter. These are the holidays they celebrate, and they go. They also light a Hanukkah candle because Adam Sandler said it's better to have 8 nights of presents than one night. But basically he's a Christian. He's a Christian. Now, if you ask this guy, he grew up Christianity. His father, he's the son of a goy. So is the guy rebelling against Judaism? He's not rebelling against Judaism. It's not an intellectual calculation. When it comes to murdering someone, there's a difference between, first degree murder and second degree murder. Capital punishment is only when it's calculated, it's what is the word? Premeditated. If you have premeditated murder where you planned it and you figured out how you're going to do that, it's a lot worse than just in the whim deciding to kill somebody. It could either be homicide or second degree murder. Look at the definition of homicide and second degree murder. Homicide is an intentional homicide, a reaction to something you're justified, but you kill the person. But anyway, it's the difference in first degree murder, I think, and second degree murder is whether it's premeditated, whether it's calculated or not. A person who grows up with Christianity, he's not calculating, I hate Judaism, I want to rebel against Judaism. He's not, I wouldn't call him a rebel or rebellious. He's someone who's a mumar, like the Gemara says, a mumar, it's from Lashon Tmura, right? Someone who exchanges. He exchanged Judaism for Christianity. It was passed down to him, or it could be even the person got baptized. Sometimes people get baptized, not to rebel against Judaism, but maybe to marry a woman, a Christian woman. He's Jewish, wants to marry a Christian woman, so based on Christianity on himself. He's not calculating, he's not rebelling against Hashem, he's not a thinking person. He likes the woman, that's why he's doing it. He's mummer, he traded Judaism for Christianity. That's a mummer, right? Is his leiv l'shamayim, right? So benechar, what's there? There's a moach and a leiv. A moach is your thoughts, your seichel, your calculations, your what you're thinking, and your leiv is where your heart is, what you're celebrating, what you're enjoying, what you're practicing, right? So when he marries a non-Jewish woman, so he celebrates Christmas, or he's the son of a non-Jewish man, he celebrates Christmas. He loves Christmas. He loves getting the presents. He loves holiday season, all the sales, but Santa Claus with the cookies or whatever. But his leiv is there. Ein leiv l'shamayim. His leiv is not, you ask where your heart is. His heart is in Christianity. His heart is not in Judaism. Your heart is your emotions, what you celebrate. He's not celebrating Judaism. He might have a menorah there, but he's not calculating and not actively rebelling with his mind against Judaism. I would say that's into a mumar and a meshumah. A mumar is someone whose libo is not l'shamayim, but his head is not against shamayim. Meshumah is the opposite. A meshumah is somebody where he could be technically grow up as a Jewish person. He's just someone that calculates and intentionally wants to go against Judaism. And he rebels by not doing the mitzvos. He maybe didn't even convert to Christianity. So maybe that's what would answer according to Rabbeinu Tam over here, that the Gemara is saying that an Ariel is libo l'shamayim, right? He celebrates Hanukkah. He celebrates only Hanukkah. He celebrates Pesach. He celebrates Sukkot. But in his mind is something is off. His mind he's rebelling against Judaism. He is intentionally, deliberately not doing the mitzvahs on purpose. He doesn't want to convert to a different religion. His libo is l'shamayim. His leiv is actions. The holidays he celebrates. He might celebrate Pesach, but he might eat chametz in private, right? He might eat chametz in private. That's the reason a mumar and a meshumah. And that's exactly the lashon of Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says the case of an arel, he can't eat it, is when he's meshumah, not mumar, meshumah. And that would make sense over here, where the Gemara says, Beinechar, Mishum de Enli Bul Shamayim, Beinechar, Kenya Karam Pesach, and he can't partake of Truma of his Leiv and Shamayim, or Arel Bul Shamayim. His leiv, his emotions, he might celebrate still the Jewish holidays, but his mind is not with Judaism. His mind is not with Judaism. So there, we could still call an Arel his leiv is Shamayim, but his mind is not the Shamayim, and that would be its qualification from eating it. So that would be the chiddush of the Torah, that Arel also can't partake of the Korban Pesach. That would be the chiddush. Both someone who's either your leiv is not l'shamayim or your mind is not l'shamayim, both of them can't eat the Korban Pesach. I wanted to just bring in, because we're learning Shalach Narach Yomi, I wanted to bring in the halachas practical halacha over here. It talks about the beginning of chulin, whether a mummer l'davar echad is mummer l'chol Torah kula. Let's say you're someone who is a mummer. That's the lashon of the Gemara. Whether you trade in your religion in one mitzvah, right? In one mitzvah you don't keep, but other mitzvahs you do keep. So are you considered a mummer l'chol Torah kula or not? The psak of the Gemara is in the Zegas chulin. The maskana is that we say mummer l'davar echad is not considered mummer l'chol Torah kula. And this is paskin in Yoreh Deah, Siman Beis, Sif Zayin, Sif Vav, and Sif Zayin. You look over there. We're talking about Hilchah Shchita. Mumar L'Davar Echad is not considered unless you're a Mumar L'Avodah Zara or a Shabbos for Heskia. Otherwise, you're not considered a Davar Echad. But it's interesting that the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch and the Torah over there is Meshumad. They changed the word of the Gemara. They changed the word of Meshumad. Really Mumar. And technically, from this Gemara, I think it's clear that Meshumad L'Davar Echad wouldn't be Meshumad L'Kol Torah Kula. If you rebel even on one mitzvah, you intentionally calculate and rebel against one mitzvah, that would make you Meshumad L'Kol Torah Kula. And your Shechita would be puzzle. A mumar l'davar echad, you exchange, you just celebrate. You don't celebrate one of the mitzvahs. Your heart is not in the place for one of the mitzvahs. That doesn't make you a goy. It doesn't make you a goy, and that makes your shchita considered a good shchita. And it's very important to make this distinction in halacha, the meshumad and a mumar. And the Shulchan Aruch, I believe, confuses the two in bringing that halacha down. And it's clear from answering Rabbeinu Tam that there's difference in mumar and meshumad. Hope you enjoyed today's shiur. We'll see you Mishnah Yomi.